Thank you to everyone that's joining us again for this edition of our Careers Insights podcast. As you know, we're aiming to do two things with these podcasts. First is to give you some insights into particular jobs or careers or industries or particular organizations. But the second is to give you some practical advice and tips and information about certain roles, certain jobs, certain industries, but also the applications process, both how you can apply and stand out at application, but also before then, and how you can tee yourself up for success when you get to that stage. So I'm joined today by Dean Carrick and Kenny Telfer. We'll come around to do introductions in a moment. I'll start by introducing myself. So my name's Dave Jarrold. I'm the careers, and no, I'm not. That's the first mistake. The job titles keep changing. I'm the skills development consultant here at Edinburgh Napier. And I'll pass over to my colleague, Kelly.
Yep. Hi, my name is Kelly Dawson and I'm a career development consultant working in the same team as Dave, and I work with the School of Computing, Engineering and Built Environment, working with those students in appointments and in workshops, basically helping them with their career, getting them to look at career options, getting them ready to go into industry, as well as helping with interview skills and applications as well.
Fantastic, thanks Kelly. And Dean, can I ask you to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dean Carrick. I am a quantity surveyor by trade. I'm a regional director at a company called AtkinsRealis, the artist formerly known as Faithful and Gould. I've been in construction for about 20 years, maybe a bit less than that, and before that I did something completely different. But as picking up on what Dave and Kelly both said about skills, the transferable skills from other sectors do come into construction as well. And that's me.
Fantastic, thanks Dean. And last but not least, Kenny.
Hi, I'm Kenny Telfer. I'm a director of a company called Torridon, who are chartered quantity surveyors. It's a practice that I started in 2017, having had a spell in various practices throughout since leaving Napier University myself. I do a bit of external examination with Napier University and the odd lecture as well from time to time. And at the moment, our focus in the business is on refurbishment of existing buildings like the one behind me here, whether it be residential that I focus on or the commercial focus that my business partner has.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys, and thanks for joining us today. So we have a loose structure for our podcast, just so we ensure we cover the basis for the students that are going to join us. And I'm going to kick that off. So my first question is just to get a sense of, for either for the industry or for your particular organizations, what's the big ticket issues just at the moment? What's the kind of hot button issues? And Dean, because you laughed at that, I'm going to come to you first.
You actually asked about your own organisation. Our current issue, we don't have a home in Edinburgh. We closed our office we had for a while. We're waiting for our new one to be finished. So I'm currently sat in a temporary office. Other people are over there dotted about. That's our current issue, but it doesn't matter because you've got teams and you can work remotely, which is fantastic. So from COVID, that helped us. But things since COVID have been problematic, should we say, across the industry. So I'm a QS, like I say. I work on a lot of school buildings, new schools, refurbishment schools, that sort of thing. And what's come under pressure most recently is the budgets for those. Public money has been squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. And not just public money, private money too. But the budgets, because of that, are becoming increasingly problematic. And the value for money items that we've got to talk about within these projects become more complex, I would suggest, as we go forward. Factors such as COVID had an impact. The supply chain thereafter, all of those were problematic. But things like the war in Ukraine, things in the Middle East are going on. They all have an impact globally, and that includes on us. Okay, so for example, forest fires in Canada had a significant impact on the price of timber a couple of years ago. It's those sort of things you've got to think about, not just working on a school. You've got to think about how other things are impacting you as an individual and you as an organisation and you as a project. Okay. I've got some other things I can carry on if you want. I do think at the moment we are struggling a little bit with skilled labour in key areas, key trades. A few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, it was bricklayers, really hard to get hold of. Now it's something different. And that's another factor, historical factor, you might say, but it's also very current, the impact of Brexit on labour movement, those sort of things. They do impact the construction industry massively because of the skill set that we have across Europe. And now it's not as easy to access that, should we say. And then the last one on my list is really about the carbon targets we've been set, reducing carbon. Our schools have got them, housing has got them. So you're looking at old stock of housing, for example, in Edinburgh, and Aberdeen and Glasgow, high-rise flatted developments where you've got to retrofit them, and you've got to meet these really strict carbon targets that are coming up, and that becomes problematic. When you match that with what I first said about budgets, it becomes really hard to deliver. Okay, so overall, it's about carbon, it's about money, and it's about delivering stuff, which is all problematic.
Yeah, I'd kind of echo that. Interestingly, I hadn't really given much thought until fairly recently. So a lot of the residential buildings that we build, whether it's extensions onto something like this that I'm sitting in or something like that, you'll see timber facades on buildings, especially the residential ones, and those are made of larch. And larch comes from Siberia, traditionally, which is Russia. Obviously, with trade embargoes, we can't do business with Russia anymore. So all of these residential properties that you see that have these beautiful larch outside cladding, we can't do that anymore. And speaking to an engineer recently, he was explaining that the timber, that because of the climate in Scotland, grows at a different speed, and therefore it's not the same quality, and it can't be used for cladding here. The materials from this country can't be used for cladding in the same way. So that presents a bit of a problem. Just like Dean says, it's the global implications of where we get our materials, and you don't always think about that. I know there was a big campaign recently, and you're going to the supermarket and you're picking up an avocado. Where's that from? New Zealand. Why am I adding to the carbon footprint by buying that? But it really is everywhere. It permeates everything. So that's a challenge, isn't it?
I'm going to jump back in again a second, Dave. So I just had a small extension built on the side of my house, and there's a reason for it. It's not just vanity. My mother-in-law is old, a lot older than me, plainly, and she can't go upstairs. So myself and my wife don't want to move, so we decided to extend against our kitchen, which includes a utility space and a downstairs toilet. The price of construction for the past couple of years has meant that it's the most expensive downstairs toilet in the world. I'll say that now. Okay, but that's local. Okay, that's locally. But then, if you think about I've got latch on part of that extension as well. Your tiles might not come locally either. So you've got to think locally, you've got to think nationally, but you've also got to think globally. Yes.
That's a really good point.
You're not filling me with confidence, because we pushed back doing an extension through COVID, and we're going to start it soon. So
it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't worry.
But it's fascinating, isn't it, when you obviously, again, we think for students and giving the perspective about industries, and we tend to be thinking about here and now and what's going to affect me and what I can do. But the extent to which sort of geopolitical and economic factors come into the day-to-day work for you guys is fascinating. Problematic, but interesting.
I think one of the things as well is that people. Certainly when I was at uni, I didn't have an appreciation. I wasn't in the industry while I was at uni. I had to get another job. And what I hadn't realized is you're working on a project, and some of these uni projects you're given to produce a cost for something, and you think, this is going to take me the kind of whole module length to do. Actually, sometimes in an office, you have to do that in a week. That's like, get that done. I need that by Friday. And even then, you're producing that really slowly, and I need it before then. So on top of all of that kind of sustainability, you've got the kind of pressure from above, whether that be your boss or in our position, our client. You've got to answer to them, and they need, inevitably, your quantity surveyor is the last in the line. So the design team have taken months to design something to get what the client wants, and inevitably there's tweaks along the way and everything. And then the client needs to know, how much is that going to be? And I need to know it right now. It's as if they think you're just going to plug the drawings into the computer and it's going to spit out a number, and it clearly doesn't work like that. So yeah, I like
what you're saying, Ken, because I talk about this quite a lot with people, is that since COVID and since everyone discovered Teams and Zoom, I think that pressure has been heightened because people believe that the Teams gives you immediacy, and so you can be called to a meeting 5 minutes later because you're available, which is a good thing. This is a great thing. We're doing this on Zoom, brilliant, okay, because no one wants to see me live, that's for sure. Anyway, but the fact is, by having Teams and have the availability shown on your Teams and background, that sort of thing, means that people think you're available, and you're not always available immediately. So that's what I think has been a downside to the use of Teams, whereas there's plenty of upsides, but it's also one of those pressures that is put on people now, that they think they've got to fill it. They don't think they've got to fill it, but people think if you've got a space in your Teams diary, you can use it, fill a vacuum and all that sort of thing. And it doesn't work, because as you say, Ken, if you're going to price a load of drawings, you need time to do it.
Yep, absolutely. absolutely. It's a really good
And
point.
then when you guys are at the kind of end of the pipe process as well, that's when the real kind of focus point and the pressure comes in.
Absolutely. One of the other things, again, going back to kind of cost pressures, I was involved in a project, kind of confidential project, and that's a big thing in our sector as well, is confidentiality. And there's so many projects we work on and are actively working on right now, I'm just not allowed to talk about. Strangely enough, we're working on the refurbishment of a secret nuclear bunker, but that's one I can talk about because it's a museum. It's not really secret. But but there are other. We're working with an A-list celebrity just now, which is amazing. It's really good fun. Very kind of. I'm limited in what I can say, but pop royalty, basically old school pop royalty. So great fun. Anyway,
can we start guessing who it
no,
might be?
we're not going to play. No, you get me sacked.
I look forward to reading about that in your memoirs.
But yeah, no matter who the client is, there's always cost pressures. And one that we did, which was a confidential project fairly recently, was a kind of organization who don't want any limelight. They don't want to be named. And unfortunately, in their sort of headquarters building, they had a fire. And there's a fairly standard, well-trodden path to go through in terms of processes for a QS to get involved and provide costs and things. And it turned out during the course of that actually the building was massively underinsured because construction costs have far outpaced the way that the insurance assessors have automatically, using whatever systems online, probably BCIS, to keep track of cost increases. And they just hadn't kept pace. And we're seeing more and more of that where an insurance claims had to go in, and actually this particular client was underinsured by 50%. So trying to reinstate that building, massive challenges, and we have to be, it was a case of what does the client do with that asset now? Can they no longer continue in that building, or can we be creative and come up with a solution that, it doesn't give them the wood paneling like behind me here in this fancy building, but maybe they still get an actual building they can use.
Slightly fewer pianos. Okay, I understand.
Fewer pianos. Yeah.
You make a good point though. The inflation aspect is interesting. So you talk about BCS, and we talk about TPI, tender price indexes, but that's a very broad brush sometimes. And particularly over the past 2 or 3 years, the indices didn't reflect what was actually happening in the market. Okay, and so you increase it by, BCIS might say 5%, but the reality is these micro inflations in the local markets, particularly for brickworkers and for timber, that's like they suddenly increase by 40%. And that is, and having to explain that to a client who thinks that they're looking at TPI, tender price index, and they are saying it's only 5%, you're saying it's now 40. You've got to explain that to a granular level, which again puts time under pressure for you delivering the final outcome of that cost plan. But it's essential that you're able to talk about that as a QS in front of a client with confidence. And I'll come on to that maybe a bit later. But the fact is, a client's putting all their eggs in your basket at that point. You're the one with the power of the numbers, and you've got to be able to be informed, let's say, by all manner of global, national, and local events and instances, and be able to then recant that back to the client.
That's fantastic. I mean, that's a really fascinating kind of big picture view of some of the challenges. Kelly, do you want to focus us down maybe a bit and talk more about the skills?
Yeah, that sounds good. So we'll move into some questions around skills then, and things that I think will be quite useful for the students to know. We'll start with the technical skills one. So thinking about industry or your organisations in particular, what's the kind of top technical skills that you think are in demand at the moment and you're really looking for in kind of maybe graduates coming through and people straight from university? What are these kind of technical skills? Dean, I'll come to you first. Sorry, I should have said.
Fair enough. No, that's fine. Okay. So I mean, I'm a QS, that's it. But we've also got project managers who work alongside us, and building surveyors, and others. And also we work with architects and engineers, plainly. And it's key, I think, that if you're coming out of university, you should know how a building is put together as you're working in that industry. You should understand how a window gets put into a hole, how the hole is built, etc. I mean, that sounds very granular, but it is, because when it comes to it, particularly to QS, I'm talking about QS, you've got to be able to price all those parts of that. Okay, so do not underestimate knowing how you put a building together. Okay, and the second part of that is then knowing how to measure properly as a QS. Now we've got electronic software. Okay, great, it makes it easy, but you've got to understand what you're looking at. You've got to understand which bit you're measuring and how you're supposed to measure it. When I started QSing, it was done with scale rules. Okay, I haven't been in it 20 years. Before that, it was probably done using chains and rods and things like that. However, they still stand the test of time, those measurements. So, for example, General Roy, the UK military surveyor back in the 1700s, he measured a distance across the South Downs of England, and it's still as accurate as it was then, shall we say. So those skills are old, but the same things apply. You've got to know what you're measuring and know how to measure it and know which bits and bobs have got to go together. The next part then would be, this is maybe a softer skill, but I think it's a key technical bit. If you are working in an industry where, as we just talked about on the first question, if you like, about being adaptable, being flexible to respond to people, you've got to do the same when you are delivering products as part of your role. So you've got to be able to adapt your calendar, maybe be flexible enough to go and see a client or respond to that Teams invite within 5 minutes. Okay, that's not normal, I would suggest, and I think you learn that quite quickly. When I came into construction, I was unsighted on certain things in the industry. You soon learn once you're working and learning at the same time. My other part, which reflects what I was talking about a bit earlier, was about the getting on board with the carbon reduction measures we've got to undertake. I am not a sandal-wearing hippie by any stretch of the imagination, but I understand why we're doing this. I understand the science behind it to a degree. I'm not a scientist either, but I do think that we've got no alternative but to go down the carbon reduction route to make sure we do the right things in time. So it's happening. Get on board and do some specific learning maybe about that, because I'm a QS, but I did what's called the Certified Passive House Designers course, and I'm not a designer, just so I could understand more, because ultimately I've got to be able to price the passive house designs. So that's something that, again, I come on to a bit later about, do something extra, as it were. And the last thing, before Kenny jumps in, is this use of AI, okay, artificial intelligence. I know nothing about it. I am 50 odd years old. I should know a bit more about it, but I don't. It's one of those things that I think will transform what we do, but you still need to know the basics behind that. Okay, so while you know about AI, have your scale rule in the other hand. Okay, but I don't know anything about AI, so I can't comment. Over to you, Kenny.
I think that's a good points there, Dean. I think one of the things I was going to mention as well is about the kind of sustainability angle, obviously, and it is such a hot topic globally. But my business partner and I have both done the Passive House course as well, and I applaud you for doing that. It's really good, Dean. And I think having an understanding of that, and it's so in depth, so detailed, but having an understanding of that, it just enables you to understand the building technology, the construction forms, the kind of pinch points, and what's difficult in building that building. And like you said, with the building technology, understanding how a building is built is absolutely fundamental to what we do. And if you don't know it, how are you going to measure it? How are you going to understand where the pinch points are and why it might cost more or less, or why, if a client asks you, would it be easier to do it this way or that way? How are you going to answer that? And you might think, oh, that's an architect question or an engineer question, but actually 9 times out of 10, you're sitting there with, my old boss said to me, a QS is the first point, the first part in the chain that gets all the accumulated data together in one point before it then gets built, and you're the first set of eyes on it that sees it as one complete set of data. And I remember about 10 years ago sitting on a project, and you do get clients who like to rush projects through for various reasons. Not saying they're all wrong, but the data came from the engineer, who will remain nameless, and the architect, who will also remain nameless. And the architect had built a 3-story building on the ground, and the engineer had built a 4-story building with an underground car park. This was going in for planning. Can we get a cost, please? Genuine 150,000 square foot office building. And one of them had an underground car park and one of them did not. So, being able to spot, you'd think that's quite an easy thing to spot, but there are little tweaks. A hotel in Sheffield that I was given, it had no external doors. How were you getting in and out of the building? They had beautiful balconies with lovely views, but you couldn't get onto them. There's no external doors. So, these things happen, and we're all there to work as a team together and get the project across the line. So, rather than a reply to all, it's a gentle phone call and kind of soft skills, So I think those are key things there. What else did I note there? It kind of BIM, building information modeling, and kind of digital twin and all that kind of stuff, all the AI stuff, as Dean said there. We're working again with Napier, looking to explore how we can take a 3D model and use, I think we both use the same Costex software, Dean, how we can use that to automatically map out dimension groups and all that kind of stuff. So some of our job is more automated. That's good and bad. Bad because when you come out of uni, one of the first jobs you're given, as Dean said, is to measure and to understand how a building's put together. If AI takes over that role, what are students going to do to learn the basics? And that's going to be a big challenge for anyone starting their career at this point in time, I would say, because we're not far off being able to do that. And certainly we've delivered one project, early stage cost plan, using, well, we actually did a kind of split method. We did the traditional way, and then at zero cost to the client, we did the AI way. And yeah, there were errors in the model, but we were able to benchmark against our traditional way to see where the kind of gaps were. But it was really good. It was very good. So
if I'll just jump in there. Yeah. So we, with the school in the West, where we had the plan drawings, or the 2D drawings, but we also had the model alongside it when we were trying to work out, doing the cost plan basically. And it was interesting to be able to use the drawings to measure accurately, and then use the model to then reference what we're at, because you can't see in 3D or 2D drawing. However, as we discovered, to measure off the drawings in this instance was better, more accurate than measuring off the model, because with a model, whatever's been put in there is what comes out of it, and there are sometimes errors in what's input. It's like garbage in, garbage out. And I'm not saying it's garbage, because it's a very good model, don't get me wrong, but it does help you see in 3D what you're trying to measure in 2D. So it's about using intelligence, or not intelligence, it's like using technology appropriately for the right tools. But you're right. I mean, when I first started in QS 20 years ago, they were talking about the depth of the QS skills to be able to measure, because you've got things like, what was it called, master bill. Yeah. That's not changed. We're still measuring. I mean, I was measuring off a drawing on Sunday because I couldn't get Costex to work, so I had to measure with a very small scale, which I was given by a contractor, off an A4 drawing on my desk and at home. I measured it. I measured a couple of windows. It was fine. But it's that sort of thing. You need to have those technical skills to be able to use the AI and the augmented reality and the BIM and all that sort of thing to make your offering much better.
It's interesting. We did an upgrade to all our IT systems recently. We've brought in an IT provider. We're still a small company. We're only 10 people, so we're still a small company. But we've now got to the size where we can have an IT provider. It's not just me and my business partner fixing your computer for you, which is, yay, it's a win. But so they've moved us over to a business version of Windows, and it's all kind of done a separate way. So everyone had to go into the office on the same day, which has been a first for a while. And everyone's computer was taken away. And we had to try and plan out, well, what work can we achieve today without computers? And I tell you, that was a real challenge, actually. And it ended up doing a bit of training with people using scale rules and measuring things and stuff. And that was interesting, because it's not something we do very often now.
Just to tell you the story, because that's what we're doing. So I used to make maps. Okay, before I got into construction, I was also a map maker, a geographer, a geomatics type of guy. And because of that, I know how scales work on drawings. The amount of people, and I would say inexperienced people, who rely on what the drawings say, that it might be 1 in 50 or 1 in 100, that could be wrong. And so and I was always taught this: always check a known dimension straight away. The amount of times I've had to remeasure stuff because it's been measured at the wrong scale, or recast it on the Costex because we've had to adjust that again. It's these fundamental. And it's easily sought out, it's easily understood, but it's these fundamental things that allow you then to become the expert in BIM or the expert in AI, because you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. I've seen so many occasions when you check a measure on something, or check a drawing, and there's a bath in the house that's like 2.5 meters long, and you're thinking, how did that happen? That's normally 2.5 meters.
I'll give you an example. This is a couple of years ago, different company, someone measured the downpipe. So I'm laughing. Someone measured the downpipes on a building. I'm just going to say a building, okay. When the technical director went to check it, he worked out there was enough downpipes to take the rainwater off the top of the Eiffel Tower 3 times because it scaled it incorrectly. That's as simple as that.
Yeah. Happens all the time. All the time. And that's probably one of the big downsides with technology, actually, is if you don't carefully use it and use it properly and have checkpoints and processes behind it all, then you like you said, garbage in, garbage out. If just because the architect said the drawing's 1 to 100, they might have printed it at A4 rather than A3, or maybe it's an A1 drawing that's been output into A3 to send it to someone. In which case they need to. Yeah, go on.
You'll have had an instance where you go to look at the scale bar, and it's got numbers on it. It says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 meters, and the scale bar's wrong.
Yes.
Okay, because it's been done in 2 separate activities.
Yep.
The scale bar's been put in, and then the drawing's been scaled, and so it's
Yeah.
incorrect. So again, don't rely on a scale bar. It does say most architects say that, do not scale from this drawing, because they know they make mistakes, and so do we.
Yeah.
But you've got to be sure that you can measure something that you know is a known dimension to be absolutely clear on what this. We're getting very much into scale problems here, aren't we? Sorry.
A slight rabbit hole, but a fascinating one. No, that's good. That gives us a real insight on the technical hard skills side of it. So that kind of, you've nudged into this a little bit already with some of the comments and observations that you've made. But obviously, my area is more around core skills, soft skills. Sometimes there is a resistance with some of the more technical areas and a pushback. And I find this not just in Napier, we externally with organisations. We're a technical organisation. This is a technical discipline. We don't need some of that soft, fluffy stuff. It's all about hard facts. It's all about hard data. So from your perspective, having worked at the front line and got to sort of management level and running your own businesses, what place do you see for those kind of soft skills, and how do you see them making a difference, and how vital do you see them for people in the industry?
I think it goes first this time.
Go, thanks. I think that's one of the key things we test for people coming out of uni, actually, because obviously your technical skills, they're at a basic level, maybe even a non-existent level to a certain degree. You've got a uni level of understanding. You've done a few tasks, and you might have done a cost plan and things like that, a bill of quantities, or even maybe just a section, because the modules are so tightly packed now. And it was the same, when I came through Napier, that you get a very small amount of time to learn each thing, because there's so much to learn, and that's great. But in the soft skills, when we interview people for grad roles or for trainee roles or anything like that, we're looking for instances where they might have gone and learned a little bit about maybe identifying project management skills. So that could be anything. It might be that they've kind of figured out a new way of doing something in their existing job, which might just be Tesco's, or it might be Starbucks or something, but they've kind of shown some enthusiasm and kind of creativeness and coming up with a solution that makes their job better, easier, more fun, something like that. And there's just something about them that's kind of said, yeah, I had this problem and it was annoying me, and I came up with a solution, and I spoke to X, Y, or Z person, and we've agreed a solution. And that's great. I love that kind of thing. So that's definitely one of the kind of soft skills we look for. Communication as well. It's so basic, but communication. And I think maybe that's where Teams and Zoom might have a problem, interpersonal communication, and how to be when you're sitting in front of someone in a meeting, in a coffee shop, or in an interview in a formal setting in an office. Eye contact. I mean, you'll see at the moment, I'm not actually looking at the screen. I'm looking at my camera above my screen. It's really uncomfortable, but you get that eye contact. And it's something that we were taught going into the pandemic, actually, that, having eye contact with someone's really important. So how do you then translate that into a digital forum? So things like that. So communication skills, and I would say problem solving, project management, that kind of soft skills area.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Kenny, plainly. One of my things is the ability to be heard, okay, because you get construction teams, project teams have quite a lot of strong characters in them, okay, and sometimes people are very vocal, and sometimes you can get drowned out. So a good soft skill is to be able to stand up and make your point, okay, and present your case and be absolutely behind it. So and that comes from being confident. We've talked about confidence. I'll probably talk about confidence again, because I think it's absolutely key to what we do. And confidence begets confidence from others. But if you are confident in what you know, confident in what you do, and you can stand up and make your point, people then listen to you. Okay, and it's essential in what we do in our role. Okay, so being able to be outspoken and be heard is one of the things. And presentation skills help that. And I think presentation skills are absolutely key to not only developing confidence, but developing people's confidence in you as well. So I do a lot with people who are graduates a lot, and go to places and make sure they do presentations with me or for me or whatever, to make sure, because I hated, when I was 15 years old, for example, I was a basket case. I wouldn't talk. Things develop through your career, your careers in my case, and you become much more confident as you get older. Old age is wonderful because you're very confident. Just that you can't stand up very quick. That's the only problem with it, and other things too. But anyway, the confidence comes from knowing that no one's there to knock you down. They're there to listen to you, and that becomes a factor in how good you are at doing your job as well, I think. And I think by developing that soft skill, and I think universities have to do that as well, because you're teaching very technical things, but how are you going to convey those technical things? You can't just convey them by an email. You've got to be able to talk about it as well. So I know that on other master's courses and other things, they absolutely deliver that by saying, right, you're going to do the technical part of it, and then you're going to deliver it in a lecture or something like that, which works really well, I think. And that's, again, I mentioned it before we started recording, but by taking people like our graduate apprentices and our APC candidates and providing lectures at Napier like we do, it really helps them understand the content and understand how to deliver confidently. And the chap who's just walked past in front of me there, who did it this morning with me, absolutely full of confidence, full of beans. He's 20 years old. He's got more confidence than I ever had at 20 years old, that's for sure. But again, that comes from knowing your onions. Okay, so that's not really a soft skill. This is really boring, but I think in what we do, if you've not got very good numeracy or literacy skills, you're going to fail. Okay. Now, and AI helps here because it can help you write things, but it's not going to put all the technical jargon behind it. Okay, so you've got to be able to count as a QS plainly. You've got to know where the numbers go, but you've also got to be able to write reports on that basis as well. So they're key to what we do as a core skill, not really a soft skill. The last one, and I often talk about this word, is collaboration. Okay, we work in an industry. As I discovered when I first came into construction, there's lots of conflict. People love to argue, okay, in our industry. However, things get done better, in my mind, with collaboration, by working effectively together. And you don't do that by accident. You do that by working hard on how you develop relationships. There's another terminology I use quite a lot, that lone wolves tend to fail, okay, because if you're doing it all by yourself, you just won't do it, in my eyes. In my view, plainly, that is. Some people can, but some people aren't very popular.
Yeah, I think one of the things in that, actually, you've just inspired me to kind of think about is talk about self-awareness and kind of we talked about kind of learning, and we talked about kind of brushing up on your skills and trying to improve in confidence and things like that. But I know Dave has released a webinar in the past about the disc profiling, and that's one of the tools that you can use. And for me, I sit on the kind of high I spectrum. I'm outgoing, quite extravagant, kind of person to person, kind of, like being chatty. And being self-aware of that, knowing that actually on the flip side of that is sometimes my attention to detail is not great. So putting processes in place, not as a company, but for me personally, to know, even though I'm a director of this company, sometimes I can look at something and go, completely miss the basic thing that's right in front of your eyes. So knowing that I have to pass that through someone else, just, could you have a quick look at that? And go, Kenny, did you not see this thing here? Like, oh, right, no, that's self-awareness, knowing your limitations and coming up with a way or a process or a system to kind of go, okay, I need to build in 5 minutes at the end of this work to check it, or I need to have someone else check it for me, or and it might be something completely different, but just having that self-awareness, using some tools to figure out who you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, and then being aware of it, so when you do a task that you can think, I wonder what weakness plays out in this bit of work that I've done here, and how could I figure that out?
Playing back on that a little bit, there's a chap who, when I moved to F&G, now AtkinsRealis, and don't get me wrong, I've worked with some great people at my previous employer as well, but when I moved to AtkinsRealis, I was buddied up with somebody, okay? He's a quantity surveyor, works in a team. He was there to make sure I did all the processes to get online, all that sort of thing. But he also, excuse me, was there to get me to know how to use the templates and things. But this chap is one of those sort of people who will find a shortcut where it is absolutely hard to find. And it's not because he finds it easier, it's because he thinks it'll help everybody else. And he doesn't just keep it to himself. He then cascades that everywhere. He's come up with some really good solutions to problems we've got on things like Excel and Word and our systems at AtkinsRealis. And he's the go-to guy in our team to say, we've got this issue, how are we going to get around it so we can make it more effective and efficient? And he usually finds it. And he's not an IT I say geek in the wrong terminology here, but he's not an IT guru. He knows, he looks at himself, he thinks, how can I do this better? You've got the shortcuts, gets it all sorted out. And then the most important thing is he tells everybody how to do it.
That's interesting. So for me, that you're talking about accelerating improvements, and Kenny, when you're talking there about your personal insights and understanding yourself, I think you're absolutely, obviously, that's absolutely right. And the more we understand ourselves, and weaknesses, it's great. So if I understand that about me, what can I do to maximize and build on my strengths? How can I mitigate those weaknesses in certain situations, and so that I can ameliorate the impacts? And so it's about, Dean, you said about, you learn this stuff over time as we get older, as we gain experience, and we do. And for me, a lot of the core skills, soft skills training that we try and put in place at Napier is to accelerate that process. So instead of waiting 20 years, because I know absolutely the stuff that I wish I'd known 20 years ago. And if somebody had just told me certain things then, it would have elevated my understanding. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to accelerate that self-understanding and the self-awareness process so that you can then move on quicker and further.
I tell you what does accelerate that sort of thing is getting thrown at the deep end, and that there is good things and bad things about that plainly. But what it does do, you either sink or swim, and if you sink, then you're plainly you're stuffed. But if you swim, you learn an awful lot more from that, I think. Now, I'm not suggesting that we throw a QS in at a graduate QS in to do something that you shouldn't be doing. But sometimes you've got to stretch yourself, and that's by being not by stretching yourself, but by being pushed to stretch. So it probably reflects what you just said, Dave.
Yeah, and then through that confidence
Yeah.
as well. That's probably quite a neat segue, Kelly, into the kind of applicant side of things and how students can then stand out as they go into that part of the next career move.
Yeah. So in lots of careers appointments, I would say one of the top things students ask me is, how can I stand out? I want to get into industry. What can I be doing now to stand out to employers and recruiters in the future, whether it be work experience or doing extra kind of qualifications while they're still at uni? What would you say? I guess, Dean, I'll come back to you again. How would you say that the students can help themselves to stand out while they're still at uni for the future?
I'm going to use one of Kenny's things. Sorry, Kelly. I've got Kenny and Kelly. I mean, you look completely different. Don't get me wrong, but you're very close on the screen. There's the backgrounds that are different. Sorry.
Stop digging, Dean. Stop digging.
What Kenny said, okay, thank you, was about what was he said? Oh no, what he said was about the fact that do something different. Even you might not be in the work environment, might be something else. So my first thing is, if you've got something on your CV which stands out. So, for example, and this is very simple. Duke of Edinburgh Award as it was, or I did the 3 Peaks Challenge in Yorkshire, that sort of thing, right? Now, it's not work related, but it shows an aptitude for doing something, okay? And you're right about doing extra courses, extra learning, because that is obviously essential to what we do as well. But that's the sort of thing that would differentiate yourself from people who can't say differentiate. Differentiate yourself from the pack, okay? And that does happen, because you get CVs and sometimes you get 3 or 4 at the same time, and you're looking for something that is different. Not that I got a 2-1 at Napier, although most people get first who are legends. It's that sort of thing that stands out. Now that's an in. That won't get you the job, but it will certainly get you noticed. Okay, so doing something different to your CV looks better, and it's not just as simple as having those words on the CV. You have to back it up in an interview and explain why you did it and what you've done it for. It's those sort of things. My other point would be then was know who you are talking to, or know who you are applying to. Know a bit about the company you're looking to get a job with. A long time ago, I joined the army. Okay, when I was young, and so when I was 15,
I did that.
Oh, there we go. We'll talk about that later, maybe. Well, I do actually. So I joined the army, and when I went to go and get my aptitude testing done at a place called Sutton Coldfield down in England, the colonel who interviewed me said, "Are you part of the cadets?" And I said, "No, I'm not." He said, "Well, why aren't you part of the cadets? Because you want to join the army." And it's a very good point. Why would you not know about the thing you want to join? And it's here the same. Know the organisation you're applying to. Know what they do and know how they operate, if you can. And these days, it's easy. There's a thing called the internet. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's wonderful for finding these things out, okay? And likewise, LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. If you get to know who's going to interview you when you come to do the interview, do a bit of homework. I interviewed someone 2 weeks ago, and the night before I did the interview with them, somebody looked at my LinkedIn profile, okay? And it was the same person, okay? I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think it's quite a good thing. I think it shows aptitude, right? And they talked about something that I talk about, which is collaboration. They talked about that in the interview. very wise. Okay, know the people, know the character of the people who are interviewing you. That helps you. So doing your homework is essential, basically. Confidence again, plainly, confidence matters, but don't be cocky. Again, it's the thing we tell our charter candidates: be confident, but do not be cocky, because cocky goes down badly with the PC assessors. Trust me. Okay, and then I think that's pretty much it. But this whole thing about getting through the door first, because sometimes positions and as budgets decrease over the next year or so, maybe a bit longer than that, you'll find that there's less potential positions, so there's more people trying to go for the same position as you are. You've got to do something to make sure you get your foot in the door first, and that could be doing extracurricular activities, it could be extracurricular learning, or whatever that makes your CV stand out to the person like me who's interviewing. Kenny.
I think something interesting that should be mentioned, and I don't know if you've seen any of this yet, Dean, but ChatGPT is great.
Yeah.
Don't rely on, I mean, use it. I'm a big advocate, but don't just take what it spits out and put it onto your CV or application form, because guess what? Hundreds of other people have done it as well, and all of those go straight in the bin because you've shown no creativity. You've taken an application, chucked it through the system, and guess what? You've been caught. Not because it's not good, it is good, but actually another 3 or 4 people have applied for the same job using the same system, and all the answers are very similar. Doesn't put the same answer, but yeah, real life example, we have had applications for jobs in that are almost identical. And when you look at it and you look at the wording, the way it's phrased, it's ChatGPT, and they don't get to the next stage. So that said, you can use it to frame the way you want to answer something. And if you put enough information out and you spend a bit of time on every question, crafting it, adjusting it and all that, you do get a good response, but don't be lazy with it. That's the key thing. So yeah, that's a good thing. And like Dean said, a well-crafted application that has a bit of thought going into it, and it's not just a copy and paste. So if you've just finished uni and you've been working at Tesco's, don't take your Tesco CV and send it to me. I want it to be, I'm interested in building, I'm interested in this type of building, I'm interested in sustainability. I did a course at this at uni and I thought it was great. And tailor your CV to have that theme. You might also want to look on the company website, as Dean said, and find out a bit about them. And if you're really interested in building brand new, modern, shiny buildings, and you apply to a company that does buildings like this one behind me, you're not going to fit. So even though if you genuinely do have a passion for this, if you think that that's what people want to hear, that's not going to work. So, you know, tailor it to the application you're making. And when you get through that application process, standing out is, you know, turning out well. We never wear suits now, so it used to be that this industry you wouldn't go into an interview without a suit on. That was just a no-no. Now I'm wearing jeans, and I wear jeans for work all the time. I know, shocking. I tend not to get dressed up unless it's a very first client meeting. I might stick some chinos on and that's it. And that's me high level dressed. Never wear ties, anything like that. But smart casual is good enough for us. And that's different for every company. So I'm not saying that's across the board, because if you go into some other companies, I probably shouldn't mention any names, but you know, there are companies that still very much wear suits and ties, and you might want to find out about that before you go. So that could be a thing. And being articulate, don't be shy, be confident. And as Dean says, don't be cocky, but be confident. Because like you say, when you're doing your dissertation, when you finish your dissertation, you are the expert on that particular topic. You know it better than anyone else. It's your, same with a case study in your APC. It's your case study. You've got the experience and the knowledge of that, and you're the expert, and you should be confidently displaying how you know about that particular subject.
Can I just talk about ChatGPT just really quickly? Sorry, I've got a friend, I'm not going to say where he works, but he's basically quite high up in the IT department, and he has to write proposals about various IT things, and he admitted to me that he uses ChatGPT virtually every day. But he did exactly what you said. He said, I don't write it verbatim. I don't use it and bang it in. I change it I use it appropriately. So Kenny's right. You can use the tools you have correctly, and it will help you.
ChatGPT came up in one of our previous episodes, and again, it was actually someone in the IT industry, and they were saying that they've stopped. We're not doing cover letters anymore, because they're just, all the cover letters were ChatGPT driven. And as you guys were touching on when we talked about AI, it's not the technology itself, but we need to learn how we use it, and we can't just take it all off the shelf, as you say, garbage in, garbage out. It's too formulaic. We need to find smarter ways of utilizing it. That was brilliant, guys. That was really, really insightful. We are going to finish, as we always do, by asking you to tell us if you were giving advice to your 20-year-old self. And I can see Dean almost in tears now, so I think I might start with Kenny. If you were going to give advice to your 20-year-old self, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's probably three parts to this from me. The first part is building your network. So, as a young surveyor, new in the industry, building that network right now, because when you get to sit where Dean and I are sitting, that's what's going to bring your income in. That's what's going to accelerate your career. That's when you've got a problem on a project and you need to know someone who does a specialist thing. That's where that network's going to come in. It's really, really, really important. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, I'm just left uni. All I know is my uni colleagues. Great, that's a great network to start with. But actually, there's more than that, because if you're going into surveying, you've got the RICS matrix, which I sat on a local Edinburgh committee. You can get involved with straight away from uni, which I did. Then I became chair of the Edinburgh committee. I chaired the Scotland committee, and then I joined the UK board. And I sat on the RICS Matrix UK board for 6 years. I did that, and I've now progressed and built my network in. I now sit in the RICS Scotland board. So you're constantly building your network, and I think that's a key thing, key bit of advice there. I think continual improvement is another one. I would say to myself, out with work, what do I need to improve? And that might be going back to our soft skills again. It might be going back to problem solving. It might be taking a DISC assessment or another one of these tools and just trying to work out. I read a book recently, and I'm a big advocate for reading business books. And Ali Abdal, who's got an amazing podcast online, I'm sure we've all heard of him, but his book recently was absolutely phenomenal. And actually, I'm probably going to get the Audible book as well, and I'll listen to it in the car on the way to meetings and just take chunks and implement them. And I think that's probably key. And the final one is maybe just a bit left field, but for me, I read a book called The Simple Path to Wealth, and I'd suggest that I'd read that from 20, because by now I'd be retired. So, the learning from that has been absolutely mind-blowing, and yeah, I'll not go into it here because it's financial and I'm not qualified to give financial advice. I'm not going down that road, but certainly in terms of, I'm just beyond the halfway point in 40s now, and you start thinking about pensions and all that kind of stuff at this age, and when you're in your 20s, you don't care. But actually, reading The Simple Path to Wealth and implementing it, even at a small level, some of the teachings in there would make a massive difference.
I'm going to pick up on the pension thing, though, if I can go on before I do anything else. One of the first things my dad said to me when I was of workable age, if you like, in his mind, 12, was start your pension as early as you possibly can. So he started his pension when he was 14. Okay, he retired at 54. My brother started work at 16 and he started a pension. He retired at 55. Granted, he was a colonel in the army, but that's fine. My sister, who worked in Hull all her life, she retired at 56 because she started a pension very early as well. So pensions that you say you start thinking about them, when I would suggest you start thinking about them straight away. Okay, so that's not one on my list of things that I would tell by 20, but it's right. Okay, so just to go back, your network you mentioned, Kenny, absolutely right. There are people at university that will come back into your life, your professional life and your personal life over the years. But that's a great starting point. Colleagues, all those people, you tend to have to rely on people in life. Okay, that network you build will be who you can rely on and who can rely on you. That's how the network gets built. Anyway, so I won't repeat what Kenny said. So my 20th birthday, let's talk about that. So I was 19. Between Christmas and New Year of 1990, when I was told I was going to the first Gulf War, okay, wow. And I was absolutely crapping myself, as you might imagine, okay. Sorry if I shouldn't use the word crapping, but I was going to say shitting, but sorry. Anyway, sorry, Dave. So I flew out to the Gulf, to Saudi, and I landed there. I got various things happening there, and then, as it happens, the US Marines in Bahrain needed what I used to do, geographic support with them. So on my 20th birthday, which is coming up soon, it's in February, on my 20th birthday, during the Gulf War, as the actual air war was going on, I spent my 20th birthday mostly in a hot tub in the Marriott Hotel in Bahrain. Okay, what's the point of this story, you might ask? Okay, the problem is that the first bit about it is you always think things are going to be worse than they are. So that's the whole point of worrying about stuff. So try and be more positive is my advice to my 20-year-old self, because things don't turn out generally as bad as you think they're going to be, and you lose out because of that, because you restrict yourself by being potentially nervous about something or potentially reticent to do something. So positivity, I think, is absolutely key to becoming a more rounded individual. And alongside that is learning to say yes to things. Okay, not just volunteering for stuff, just without reason, but saying, when someone says, "Do you want to come and do this?" rather than saying, "Oh, I really can't be bothered." Try saying yes now and again, because I used to say a lot of things like, "I can't be bothered." Saying yes gets you to do other things there and helps you develop things further later on in life as well, I would suggest. So saying yes absolutely matters. And my last one, what you can't tell from here, from there upwards, is that I'm quite a fat chap. Okay, so what I would say is that to my 20-year-old self, you will not always have the metabolism of a racing snake. Lay off the sausage rolls, Dean.
I wish I'd taken that advice too. Yeah.
And I'd like that advice that washes through life for you. carry that one forward with you.
Having said that, I just had a sausage roll for my lunch, so.
As he was writing his presentation for this,
brushing the crumbs off. Yeah. Listen, gents, we are very conscious of time, so I'm going to draw us to a close. But just to say thank you very much for the time that you've given us today and for the insights and the reflections. I say what we're trying to do is bring to life the skills work and the careers advice and all of the things that we pull together for students. And it's one thing getting it from our side and giving students the benefit of the work that we can do, but it just adds a whole other dimension when we can put it in context and get it from the horse's mouth, from people who are in the industry, who are doing the things that they want to be doing, and give people that direct line of sight to where they want to get to. So, yep, thank you once again, very much appreciated, and we may well call on you for another episode at some point in the future. So,
thanks, Dave. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you, Kenny.
To meet you both. Thank you.
Toodaloo.
Bye.